fam? I told you I like everything. All kinds of music. Music just speaks to my soul. Anyway, welcome to Living for You. It is your favorite uncle, your favorite cousin, your favorite brother. It is the best friend's best friend. It's me, Dr. Larry. Once again, welcome. It's great to see you. How y'all doing today? From what y'all look like y'all doing great. Y'all look really good. So I want to say welcome, welcome, welcome. Living for You. We are here. This is episode 4, I think. Maybe 5, but either way, we going with this. We moving. You guys have been great. Guys have been working with me, sending in questions. Let's just continue to grow this community because it is a great thing. We have the table. You come to the table. We sit at the table together as a family, and we talk, fam, and we have real conversations and real discussions, and we talk about different things. Of course, you guys know I'm a life coach, so there's that life coach component to where we help each other grow and become better us. In order for us to continue to do that, I'm going to ask for you guys to subscribe, to go ahead and hit the notification bell so you know when I release things. If you haven't noticed or if you're not paying attention, I release things twice a week. Mondays and Thursdays are my days to release that you can expect me to be there and to show up at this table with you so that we can have these conversations and we can go through these things at this table with this buffet, this wealth, this plentiful of stuff for us to consume together. So go ahead for me and subscribe, hit the notification bell, like the videos, give us a thumbs up, and if you want to, leave comments, ask questions. What topics do you want to talk about? What things do you want to address? Are there any concerns? And if you have a very personalized question that you send to me directly at drlarry at live4ucaoching.com, I can use it here and I will let you remain anonymous. I will not put your information out there, but we will use it for the community if we need to for our own enrichment together. That's what we're here for. We're here to grow as men together. As you already know, I'm Dr. Larry Smith, or Dr. Lawrence Smith, specializing in life coaching, spiritual life coaching, specifically geared at African American males 18 to 40, but I can coach anybody who dealt with trauma. We're all trying to work this thing through life. We're on the same journey, we just going about it in different directions, and that's really in different ways. That's really what this is about. So like I said, today we have a great wealth of stuff for you. That is going to be wonderful. Actually, today we're going to talk about 3 signs of the traumatized mind. 3 signs of the traumatized mind. Remember, I talked about what trauma was in a previous video. What I'll do is I'll link it in here so that you can go back and watch that so that you know what that is, and what trauma is and all of those things. And so that you're able to understand when we talk about traumatized mind. When I talk about traumatized mind at Live4U Caoching, when we deal with traumatized mind, this is what we're dealing with. And so today we're going to talk about 3 signs of a traumatized mind. And there are many signs, so we're just going to focus on 3. Maybe perhaps in a later video we can add a few more, but these are 3 of the major ones that you see externally from somebody who still has residue, things, stuff, emotional stuff, baggage that they're dealing with because of a trauma that they've experienced in the past. They've pulled it into their present reality, and these are things you can see that you know. These might be things that you have. These might be things that a friend have, or a significant other, a spouse may have these things. You may have these things, and it is an indication, a clear indication that there's some trauma there that needs to be worked through. And of course, Live4U Caoching has coaches for that. There are other places that have coaching for that. Get you a life coach. It's okay. Nowadays in society, I think it is widely received that things like coaching and therapy are okay. I was watching TV one day and I saw celebrities, I think it was Taraji P. Henson and some other people, talking about the importance of therapy. So get the help that you need. You are the only one who's responsible for really being the best you that you can be. You're really the only one who can fix that or can deal with that or can do that. So take what you need, get what you need, do what you need to do. So anyway, you get it. You get the point. So today we're going to talk about the 3 signs of a person who is potentially dealing with a traumatized mind. And that is a very, very, very important list. It's a very, very important thing to be able to recognize it in yourself and in others. As a reminder, the definition of trauma, I'm not going to go into full details here, it's just trauma is a disruption in your present state, a disruption in who you are at whatever moment you're in, that present moment in that moment. And what it typically does is if a person can't deal with it or not dealing with it or won't deal with it, it typically has a person stuck into the past, thinking about the experience, reliving it, and it can be any traumatic experience. There's a list of things that can be considered a trauma, and they vary from person to person on the level of what it does to a person internally. And so, it causes the person to look to the past, to continue reliving that experience, continue thinking about that experience, continue thinking about it in their minds, or the woulda, shoulda, couldas of the past as it relates to that experience, and it's affecting their present today from a past thought. But it also keeps a person engaged fully, wholly, completely into the future and to trying to get away from this present moment so much that they spend all their time focusing on the future. And you see people use many ways of trying to either suppress things to move future to the future, or you either see people kind of self-sabotage by focusing so much on the past. So trauma is just a disruption in your present state to a level of where it has an emotional feeling for you. My specialization is African Americans 18 to 40 who have residue from trauma, and they're having a difficult time finding their present. The best place to be, the most important place to be, is in the present and having a full present life. But sometimes we're unable to do that. And so not dealing with trauma can actually lead a person into what I call the traumatized mind, right? And in the traumatized mind, what winds up happening is you're stuck in one of those places. You're stuck in either the past and that reality and what all that brings and continues to do to you, or you're stuck into the past and that reality. This is what I call the traumatized mind. And this is where most of the problems that we see as it relates to these traumas and that life coaches deal with and therapists deal with all the time. This is where most of that stuff comes from that we deal with often. And our job really at the core is to recognize where that person is in that traumatized state, in that traumatized mind, and try to help them move more back into their reality. Interestingly enough, for African Americans, we tend to be very expressive people, and we tend to express our feelings, express our thoughts, express our words. And I think there's a lot of cultures like that, but I can really speak from my own personal experience as an African American man, a black man. I'm very much aware of my consciousness of expression. We express ourselves. In our families, we talk. Some people say we're loud, whatever. We're just very expressive. We express it through music and through dance, and we're just an expressive, culturally expressive people. Because of that cultural expression, sometimes our external expression, especially when we haven't dealt with our trauma, is not always a healthy expression. And it does damage to ourselves and sometimes to people around us. And that's why it is very important, specifically for black men, for us to be able to deal with our trauma in a healthy way and to be more present and centered in the present reality, because we can do some serious destruction in the lives of other people if we are not present people. Some of us have fathers, some of us have grandfathers, or pathologies, historical pathologies in our family that show when we're not present. It's passed down from generation to generation and to generation. So now we're at a moment where we're reaching out to save our sons. We're reaching out to save ourselves. We're reaching out to do what we need to do to make sure that we're present, because not living in that reality has caused a tremendous issue in my culture. But I'm sure any of you out there watching can see that similar thing in your culture and can speak to that truth. One of the things that I pride myself on is that I don't generally speak for others' experiences that I know nothing about. I allow them to have a voice. So I'm sure in my voice I can speak as an African American, a black man here in this experience, but I'm sure some of you can speak from similar experiences in your own cultures and in your own environments and in your own experience. So today I'm going to give the three visual signs of a traumatized mind and what each looks like and what it means specifically from a life coaching perspective. The first one is depression. Depression doesn't always manifest itself physically, but when it does, you can see it. You withdraw from friends. You gravitate to more of a self life. You're not very optimistic about life. Someone says, "Hey, I'm doing this and this is great. Life is wonderful," and you're like, "Not really. It's not that great. It ain't that. My life hasn't been that great." And you kind of have a you're depressed in. You're insular. You're not really expressive. You're not really joyful. You don't find really optimism much out of your experience in life. And depression can get so deep that some people have to take medications for depression. Some people have to be in therapy over and all the time for depression. And as a life coach, I deal with depression based on the trauma, because of the trauma. What depression usually is it's kind of a response to the trauma of shame and a response to the trauma of guilt, right? That you're taking on the responsibility of what the trauma was internally into yourself. And you got to remember that circumstance, things outside of your being, isn't necessarily your fault, right? The things that you can take responsibility for, you can take responsibility for. But at the end of the day, to have the guilt and to hold it in can lead to a deep sense of depression. So one of the very first major signs you can see that somebody is in a traumatized mind is depression. And it's a very common one. And like I said, as a black man, we're taught in our culture to internalize our issues. That is the worst thing you can do, is to internalize your emotions and your feelings and try to suppress it. Because energy is energy. Energy is energy. It will find a way of getting itself out, right? Energy never dies. It only changes forms, but it is always around. So if you are a person who is holding in some type of depression and not really allowing your emotions to be expressed, you will manifest that in some capacity. I promise you. Another external visible sign of a person dealing with traumatized mind is anger. That's another major one that we see very much often. There is a stereotype of the angry black man, right? That the black men are always angry. And that's not the case. We just have dealt with trauma, and we continue to deal with some traumas in the society, and we respond the way that we know how. Most of us haven't even been taught how to respond to trauma without being aggressive. What might come across as aggression might be nothing but what might comes across as anger might be nothing but simple aggression. And so you have to understand that that is a visible sign of trauma, right? That is a visible sign of somebody who is dealing with the traumatic mind. Because what happens is, instead of just holding it in as a depressed person would, a person who is angry lashes out, and people in their lives feel it, and it can come out in violence, domestic violence, it can come out in family violence, it can come out in self-violence. Violence against oneself, or violent behaviors. And violence doesn't necessarily have to be physical. It can actually be violent expression, violent comments, violent thoughts. So that's an angry person. And that person is deep in that traumatic state, in that traumatized mind, that they're so pressed, and that energy is coming out in a very passionate and toxic way. And it changes form, so say if you had a trauma related to your mother, that might come out and you have a weird way of how you express to women, or you might have a violent, angry way of how you express to women, or you might reject women. When we talk about sexuality, because that's a very interesting conversation, a lot of people don't want to admit it, but sexuality is something that we haven't pegged on how it happens. We're not very knowledgeable fully about sexuality. We haven't found whether or not there's genes that make you preference to certain sexualities or not. We're not fully certain that it's just socialization, because each experience is different. So you can't really set in stone that this is why somebody does something. But I have met people, I've met men who do not like women sexually because of a past trauma from their mom that they reject the female, they reject women. And I don't shade people for whomever they love and whomever they like either way. You know, I just want to understand when it deals with trauma, how has that trauma affected you? And how do we get you to a state of authenticity and presence and accepting who you are or who you love or however you do things in the present moment from a healthy perspective and not because of trauma that you've went through. So anger is a clear indication of a person who has dealt with, who hasn't fully dealt with, and who are still living in the traumatic mind. The last one is defense, right? We know people like that. Somebody you talk to, every little thing, they're sensitive about it, and they always feel like they got to explain who they are, why they are, what they do. They seem to have attitude every time you talk to them. They seem to be very on edge. These type of people in their mind sometimes think about, you know, like they think about what they're going to say to somebody if somebody says something disrespectful to them. Ain't nobody gonna disrespect me. Ain't nobody gonna tell me nothing. I'm big bad this. Or they're on defense and they're always trying to justify sometimes negative responses to what people say and do to them. Defense is a clear indication that this person has some type of almost embarrassment for what had gone to them. Angry is self-explanatory. You're angry because you're angry at what happened to you and you're lashing out. But defense is really just kind of an embarrassment. It's almost an insecurity that a person has, and they live in that insecurity. That is a clear sign of a traumatized mind, because what's happening is that person hasn't dealt with their trauma. They haven't fully come back to the present. A person in the present is not going to get defensive about everything that's said. You pick and choose what you defend yourself against. Everything's not a battle. Life shouldn't be a constant battle. Can you imagine an actual war where people were actually having to fight every day of their lives for 20, 25, 30 or more years? That is a constant level of exhaustion. That's a very difficult experience to have. And so to be on the defense is toxic. To be on the defense is dangerous. To be on the defense is not just dangerous to people you may be defending yourself against, but also to yourself, to have to deal with that internal emotional beatdown every time. Depression or anger or resentment or defense or anything in between every time. So those are three major signs that a person is dealing with a traumatic mind or a traumatized mind or a past trauma. If they're depressed, and you can see it, not all depression you can see, but visible depression can let you know. If they're angry, anger is very visible, so that's a clear indication. And then another one is defensive. Now, I'm not a person to rely on labels. I don't label things good or bad, good or evil, great or grand. I don't do any of that, because I believe that labels do not sufficiently explain anything. It just makes us comfortable at categorizing, and that's why we do it. People do it for convenience. But the reality of it is, I believe we are who we are intended to be at that moment. And I believe that it is important that we evaluate who we are and who we're intended to be at that moment, so that we can either grow from it or get more of it. Because sometimes we got good, and all of us are good people. And I think that we have to grow beyond that. But it's important that in yourself, you first see whether or not you are displaying traumatized mind or you haven't dealt with trauma, and get the help that you need. Even before you point it out at somebody else, you should be more inclined to point it out within yourself first. And then if you have a friend, a spouse, a significant other, a coworker, anybody that you have a conversation with regularly and that you're able to be honest with, let them know some of the things you see. If you see any of these three things, if you see depression, if you see anger, if you see defense, let them know that, hey, I see these things and I think this might help you. And you can recommend them to Live4U Coaching. You can recommend them to me. Give them my email address at drlarry at Live4U Coaching. Send them here to the YouTube page. so that they're able, YouTube channel, so that they're able to get tools. Because that's what we're doing here. That is our goal of this channel, is to give people tools and information and advice and help kind of coach you. This is free stuff. You know what I'm saying? Use this free stuff to help yourself, to help your friends and family to just be the best, more present tense person or people that they can be. And so, if there are any of those three things that you may deal with, we have resources available for you. I can personally coach you. You can go, like I said, to live4ucaoching.com and see what's out there. There are free resources that are out there. You can email me directly at drlarry at live4ucaoching.com. You can hit me up on Facebook. You can follow us on Facebook. You can follow us on Instagram at Dr. Larry Smith, PhD, at both of those places. And you can sign up for coaching if you want. So there are free resources, or you can go somewhere else. But either way, there are free resources that are out there that we provide, that are out there for you in general, that can help you to process and deal where you are. It just takes a step. It just takes a step for you to get to where you need to be. So those are three major examples of the traumatized mind. We'll probably have other casts where we talk about others that you may or may not have seen, or you may or may not have thought of. Our job here, once you come to this table, is for us to sit in love as family and have very real discussions. So remember, subscribe, turn on your notification bell, like the video, comment, leave comments, give suggestions. We are here for you to serve, come grow with each other. This is why we are here. Living for You is going to be there, and we're doing what we need to do. So remember, I love you. I had fun. I hope to see you next time. And until next time, enjoy life.